India is a nation of 1.4 billion people, yet somehow they've never managed to create one semi-decent footballer. Well, that's a lie. They produced Sunil Chhetri, a footballing icon and all-time record goal scorer for the nation. He never managed to make it a big side or make the journey over to Europe. So despite having the highest population of any country on the globe, why exactly are India bad at football?
If at every stage we have a proper way of supporting the kids who not only play sports, things would be so much different.
Now, you might have been distracted by all the shenanigans going on at AFCON recently, and I don't blame you. Some of them are out there playing Call of Duty, others are doing up rush goalkeepers. And every single match day is providing shocks, surprises, with late drama and action all over the place. But lurking in the shadows, another international tournament is currently taking place. The 18th edition of the Asian Cup. As I'm recording this currently, 4 teams remain. South Korea will face off against Jordan in a semi-final, and in the other, the host nation Qatar are facing off against Iran. If you've got anything above an E in GCSE geography, you might be asking the question, Niran, aren't there some pretty big nations over in that Asia gap? Well, you'd be correct. There are some big nations over in that Asia gap. China, who we'll get onto a different time, and India. Population size 1.4 billion, goals scored at the tournament 0. India, managed by Igor Stimac, who's been at their helm since 2019, went out in the group stages on 0 points with 0 goals accumulated after a convincing 3-0 defeat to Uzbekistan, and then further losses to Australia and Syria. Now, hey, listen, secretly, that's actually a pretty decent group. Australia, of course, powerhouses of Asia/Oceania. After making the move to the AFC, they actually won the Asian Cup in 2015. Uzbekistan are in the top 70 in terms of world rankings, and Syria sit above India too. Where are India, I hear you ask? 102nd in the FIFA world rankings. That's behind Kosovo, who only achieved their independence in 2008. That is a nation that's currently in year 11. Behind Kyrgyzstan, Curacao, and Haiti. The populations of those countries combined add up to just over 23 million, compared to 1.4 billion. And the reason for the low ranking is because of their results. A nation the size of India lost 3-0 to Qatar, 4-2 to Malaysia recently. In 2022, they lost to Bahrain, Belarus, Jordan, and Vietnam. In 2021, they lost 6-0 to the United Arab Emirates. Back in 2015, things were even worse. They were 173rd in the world rankings after a 9-1 loss to Kuwait, 6-3 loss to Yemen, 5-1 defeat to Oman, and a 2-1 loss to Guam, who are only 5 places above San Marino right now. And look, I know population doesn't equate to footballing ability, otherwise China would be class and Belgium wouldn't be anywhere near the top 4. I mean, it shouldn't be anywhere near the top 4 based on results either, but overall it still feels like this doesn't make any sense. So we've got to delve deeper and understand why one of the world's powerhouses aren't better than a nation that unironically are called Guam.
Why'd I get picked up?
India as a whole is a nation that is surrounded by beautiful and diverse culture. It's given us sugar, cashmere, shampoo, yoga. Allegedly, Scotland created the tikka masala, but I'm giving India the point for that one as well. From a sporting sense, there's only one that dominates over the rest.
India lift the World Cup.
The national sport is, of course, cricket, and India are pretty sick at it. They're 2-time ODI world champions, 1-time T20 world champions, currently 2nd in the ICC world rankings. They're good at cricket. But football was always on the back burner in comparison. Well, sort of. Because you see, things weren't always this bad in the world of Indian football. Back in 1950, they actually qualified for the World Cup, but refused to take part. They beat Australia 7-1 at the Olympics in the 50s, and were even runners-up in the Asian Cup, the competition they just got knocked out of, having scored 0 goals in 1964. But after years of general decline, both domestically and on the international stage, it would take all the way till the 2000s, the turn of the century, for the arrival of their favoured son. All the way through India's struggles in recent times, there would at least be one man who would define their football. Sunil Chhetri, a poacher, goal-scoring forward, and a natural-born leader. This man is the face of Indian football. He's the nation's all-time top scorer and appearance maker, and is currently 3rd in terms of active goal scorers across the world on the international stage. Only Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi have scored more for their nations and play today. Or in the case of Lionel Messi, don't play today.
Una plantilla como para ilusionarnos.
If we're talking the greatest of all time goal scoring debate, there's Ronaldo, there's Messi, and Sunil Chhetri sat at the table.
Who would have thought? Not me.
Domestically though, this guy was more of a journeyman up till 2016, playing for a number of Indian sides. His pro career began in 2002, but he played for a number of teams in the nation like JCT, East Bengal, Mumbai City, a trip to the US playing for Kansas City, and even a brief spell in Portugal for Sporting Lisbon's B team. But that's his only time playing in Europe. Completely different story though internationally, because despite India's world ranking woes, Sunil would excel. In his first tournament, the Nehru Cup in 2007, he'd score 4. Then set up the goal for the final to win the tournament for the first time, and he'd play in 2 other tournaments that year, scoring a combined 6 goals across them. Setting up a goal for a guy called Climax Lawrence. There was no other reason for him to be in this video other than I just wanted to say the name Climax Lawrence.
I beg your pardon?
It was an instant impact from Sunil. He'd score a hat-trick in the AFC Challenge Cup and set a record for goals scored in the SAFF Cup with 7 in 2011. Now, if you're confused about what some of these tournaments are, these are kind of localized Asian tournaments that India can be in. Imagine like you had the Euros, obviously in European competition, but on top of that, England also played in the United Kingdom Trophy. SAFF stands for the South Asian Football Federation, and India are kind of one of the top dogs amongst the countries that compete. Because other than them, you've got Bangladesh, nations like Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. The Nehru Cup is organised by the Indian Football Federation, and they kind of just invite along countries to participate. Either way, Sunil Chhetri and India, in fairness to them, were pretty good amongst tournaments like these. On a broader scale, in the Asian Cup in 2011, Sunil would still score 2 goals against much better opposition, but would be let down by the rest of his side in defeats to Bahrain and South Korea. But all the way through this, Sunil is scoring very, very consistently. He scored 12 goals for India in 2011 alone, but he's still scoring, helping India go to a completely unbeaten 2017 and scoring 4 goals in Asian Cup qualifying. The new Intercontinental Cup, organised by India's Football Association, saw him score a hat-trick in the first game, but after a low turnout from Indian football fans, Sunil would post a video that would go viral, calling for more people to turn up, and that's exactly what they did. They packed out stadiums from this point onwards, seen him score a brace in the next game in his 100th appearance for India. And I can't underestimate how many goals he's actually scoring for India at this point. In 2018, at this precise moment, he's above Cristiano Ronaldo in the goal-scoring rankings for their countries. He scored the opener in the SAFF final in 2021 and was still scoring important goals in finals all over the place and all over the continent. By 2023, he is an Asian icon and an Indian legend. But despite incredible accolades for his country, that one journey to Europe that I mentioned earlier on only resulted in 3 games for Sporting's B team. Playing in Europe does not define the success of a footballer, far from it. But it seems to be a continuing trend for Indian footballers especially. Heroic long-term Indian goalkeeper Subrata Pal ventured briefly into Danish football but played no games. Baichung Bhutia played for Bury in the Football League for 3 years from 1999 and became only the 2nd Indian footballer to play in Europe ever. And if you're wondering who the first was, it was a man called Mohammed Salim who played for Celtic in 1936. But why exactly is that? You know, we talked about the spark originally that was there for Indian football in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Then the decline, them losing in shambolic performances to sides that are not necessarily that good. But there's got to be some kind of reason why there's not more Sunil Chhetris. Well, the first reason I've kind of mentioned slightly already in the story about Sunil, and that's a lack of interest. Kind of. Sunil Chhetri having to ask fans to come and watch games is not ideal. But Pep Guardiola does that at Man City every single week. There's no national sport in India, but if it was to be, it would either be hockey or cricket. Football does not even hold a candle to either of those in terms of piquing Indian fans' interest. Well, that's what it seems like on the face of it, but if you actually delve deeper, the numbers are pretty decent. Former ISL side ATK, full name Atletico de Kolkata, actually used to pull in some mental numbers. In 2015, they broke the attendance record in India with 68,000 people attending a match. Kerala Blasters hit 65,000 in 2014 and 2015. Even as recently as 2022, the annual record was 62,000. That's more than the capacities of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Anfield, and the Emirates. The overall average in the 22-23 season was just 12,700, but that was also impacted by the aftermath of COVID over there. And the 2015 average, which ranks at 27,000, ranks above Indian Premier League cricket for that year, the Chinese Super League, and the average attendance of Serie A that campaign. So interest levels aren't that catastrophic, right? Unlike my bank account. But another issue is also a level of corruption that there's been in Indian football in the past. The former All Indian Football Federation officials, so the guys that are involved in organising like the Nehru Cup that I mentioned earlier, they were suspended for their involvement in the Bin Hammam bribery scandal that obviously rocked the world of FIFA 10 plus years ago. A lot of players and teams in the nation have voiced their concerns about corruption, nepotism and unfair team selections, and that kind of has a negative impact on the credibility and potential investment in the league as well. And that leads on to another thing, another problem, a lack of investment as a whole. Infrastructure and gaps between income levels in India are a bit of a problem when it comes to football, and in comparison to the Chinese Super League, for example, and China, who could also be a lot better, truthfully, they had the wild investment that there was at the start of the Chinese Super League. And that was not only in terms of bringing in footballers, but it's also in terms of infrastructure and also footballing facilities over there as well. You had the likes of Hulk, Oscar, Yannick Ferreira, Carrasco, just to name a few, who went over there kind of in their prime, or at worst, like slightly after their prime. And that saw a big increase in like worldwide status for football in China. Whereas in India, that's not been the same. There's not been that explosive growth yet. In 2016, we saw a 37-year-old Diego Forlan, John Arnaisa, and Florent Malouda go over there. But they were all extremely old. Nicolas Anelka, Robert Pires, Roberto Carlos, and David Trezeguet have also all played there, but also needed a free bus pass at the time. Aaron Hughes was listed as a marquee signing. Any big name footballers who traveled over to India for a decent paycheck were already so far over the hill that it didn't really bring anything new apart from purely the name to the league, and it almost demeaned it in a certain way. How can a 45-year-old Roberto Carlos still do the job there? And in terms of current foreign players, I looked through the whole list and I'm genuinely not even gonna lie, I didn't recognize a single name. But a lack of funding and infrastructure and facilities is also rife in areas like Africa and in South America as well. Yet they still produce good players across those continents on a regular basis. So the main issue in my eyes, though there's some level of improvement in this area, has to be the quality of coaching. Now I'm not saying they're just shit, but relative pay for pretty highly qualified coaches in India is just far too low. Even if you have high level coaching qualifications, it's not necessarily a stable career to go into. So straight off the bat, the level of coaching is nowhere near good enough to actually develop young footballers. The youth facilities aren't good enough, and the prospects then for those young players aren't either. There's an element of the unknown by wanting to be a footballer anywhere across the globe. You can make it or not in England, in France, in Germany, in Spain. But at best, if you're a young Indian footballer, you're looking at a lengthy career in the Indian Super League, then maybe being a coach and then getting underpaid afterwards. The incentive isn't really there. Why do that and have a small chance of just about making it when you could go into a more academic career? Routes into the first team aren't common enough either, so that again hurts development for youngsters who are trying to break into an Indian Super League side. And all of those things, combined with a slight lack of interest in comparison to sports like cricket in the country, mean that there's probably a lot of potential prospect good footballers in India, but they're either let down by underfunded coaching, pretty poor facilities, or having an interest in something else more fruitful, either being a more academic career that's far more stable, or just a different sport altogether like cricket if you're athletically gifted. Why would you not do any of those things in favor of a perennially underachieving national team? So when we talk of India's footballing abilities, it almost feels like that of lost potential. Ultimately, a combination of a slight lack of interest, poor facilities and coaching, and then a lack of prospects outside of the continent and beyond a footballing career. I mean, there's just like not that much of an incentive for a young player who's actually good at football to want to genuinely have that as a career.
The identification of the talent and nurturing the talent are the most important aspects of sports. In our country, sadly, we wait for somebody to become a hero, worship the hero, only when he has become the hero.
If things don't change, if there isn't a improvement in grassroots funding or in funding of coaching, then we are going to continue to see a nation of India that just struggles on the footballing stage. A country that continues to never produce a good footballer. Well, that's a lie. There was Sunil Chhetri, and there will be another one. Have some hope, because a man of this goal-scoring prowess and natural footballing ability could just inspire the next generation.